Thanks for staying with us. Now, the chairman of the National Media Commission, Yao Buedu Ayabuafo, says political parties must be responsible for the safety of journalists covering their events. Ghana dropped 4 points on the Press Freedom Index of 2019 following reports of abuse of journalists in the country. Speaking at this year's World Press Freedom Day in Accra, Mr. Ayabuafo said the narrative must change.
Ghana has lost its status as Africa's best-ranked country in the World Press Freedom Index, mainly due to the brutalities and threats meted out to journalists. In the 2019 World Press Freedom Index report prepared by Reporters Without Borders, Ghana ranked 27 as against 23 in 2018. This year's theme, Media for Democracy, Journalism and Elections in Times of Disinformation, highlighted current challenges faced by media in elections, along with the media's potential in supporting peace and reconciliation processes. Commemorating the day in Accra, media practitioners called on government to take a second look at the media landscape and ensure that journalists have the freedom to carry out their duties effectively. In response to these requests, Chairman of the National Media Commission, Yao Buedu Ayabuafo, outlined a number of measures the Commission is putting in place to ensure journalists are safe.
Anywhere that you go, let somebody know your movement, that somebody is aware. Take precautions under certain circumstances. When you are going to certain environments, you should understand the environment within which you are going and dress appropriately to suit that particular environment. It is not about your right. Nobody can take your right from you. But when you live among people, you must understand them. We've begun series of discussions and training programs, out of which we are going to develop guidelines on safety. As a first step, under the guidelines on political reporting of the National Media Commission, political parties have been enjoined to take responsibility for the safety and security of journalists who attend their ceremonies. And so if you go to any event of a political party, as well as any organization, and the journalist suffers any brutality, the primarily will hold the organizers of that event responsible.
GJA President Afel Moni says the GJA welcomes government's planned intervention of safety mechanisms for journalists and will complement the initiatives with ethical training programs to be supported by MTN.
The GJA welcomes wholeheartedly government's planned intervention on safety mechanisms for journalists. The timing is perfect and the response concrete. Without wrestling with doubt, we hope and pray that this intervention will take off as planned. We also embrace government's capacity building initiative for journalists. The point can hardly be articulated that the capacity of journalists is fundamental to the ability to perform satisfactorily. The GJ will complement these initiatives with ethical training programs to be supported by MTN to help cure the cancerous spread of ethical bankruptcy and professional mediocrity in sections of the media.
Meanwhile, government is in the process of implementing a media capacity enhancement program to boost the capacity of media practitioners as well as boost the national coordinating mechanism on the safety of journalists before July.
Where there is hatred, that we may sow love. That where there is injury, we encourage pardon. That where there is doubt, we bring faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, we should be the light. And that where there is sadness, we journalists should bring joy. To be able to do this, we must work to be able to differentiate facts from opinion. We must avoid sensationalism at the expense of accuracy. We cannot sacrifice balanced reportage on the altar of expediency and getting ahead of the market. As a country, we are making steady progress progress towards a conducive environment for the practice of journalism. Government is in the process of implementing a media capacity enhancing program to boost the capacity of media practitioners in the delivery of their mandate.
Ghana's worst performance was in 2013 when it ranked 30, and its best was in 2015, ranking 22.
Now, the U.S. ambassador to Ghana is meanwhile admonishing Ghanaian journalists to be critical when chasing leads for stories on social media. Mrs. Stephanie Sullivan made the call when she engaged selected journalists in Kumasi to mark World Press Freedom Day on the theme Media for Democracy, Journalism and Elections in Times of Disinformation. The U.S. ambassador said overly relying on social media is not a panacea to increase fake news in the media.
Sending you things that, to all of us, that reconfirm our own, bias confirmation is the technical term, but it's just like, see, yeah, I knew that was true. And so I always advise people to, get your media from a lot of different sources. And then you kind of can triangulate, if you will, to figure out, okay, maybe this is presenting one side of the story, this other outlet is presenting another side of the story, this one somewhere in the middle. But again, that intellectual curiosity, not to just jump on something that popped up as the truth, because sometimes there are nuances, and yet when you have what I'll call fake news, it really undermines the credibility. And if you, as responsible journalists and your responsible and respected news outlets, rush to pick something juicy off of social media and spread it, it can be very damaging. It can have real world negative consequences, and then it makes it hard to the boy who cried wolf. And I think when there is credibility, one has a stronger case for getting public support for media freedoms and also government support in whatever country we might.
Well, since January 2018, at least 11 journalists have come under attack from the public, even the police. But none of these cases have been prosecuted. Mrs. Sullivan says this trend should not be encouraged.
This year, at the beginning of the year, it was very shocking to learn of the death of Ahmed Hussein Swaleh. It's not that there had not been journalists who died before, but this looked very much like some sort of a targeted assassination. The investigations are ongoing, but I think it was very chilling to all of us. As a result of that, in part, the latest Reporters Without Borders dropped Ghana on its index. You probably all know this. Dropped 4 places and now is in 27th place. Which is, 27th place in the world is a pretty good place to be, but it's Ghana. Ghana can't, in my mind, Ghana is such a special, wonderful place with so much potential that to be, we're better than other people, the neighbors. To me, that's not necessarily aspiring to be all that Ghana can be. And again, you have a very important role in helping Ghana be all that it can be.
2 other stories now, and the district chief executive for Ningo Pram Pram, Jonathan Doku, has assured the youth in that district that the bad roads there would be constructed soon. His assurance follows a near-violent protest today. Ningo Pram Pram youth bent car tires and blocked the road linking the Dawinya and Afienya roads, protesting to compel the government to heed their cry for better roads. Correspondent Kwame Yanka has more in this report.
Ningo Prampram youth agitated over poor roads in their community. To express their frustrations, they blocked the main road leading to Prampram. The protest turned chaotic when personnel from the Ghana National Fire Service tried to douse the fire. It was at this point that some youth started pelting stones at the fire service personnel. The police then fired warning shots and tear gas to disperse the irate youth.
Our grandparents, our mothers, our fathers are dying as a result of the dust. The school children are also going through a lot as a result of the dust. When you go through this road, we have a clinic there. In fact, the clinic is not functioning well. We have a lot of people that have built houses along the road, but they could not stay because of the dust. Not long ago, one of the chiefs in Afienya has just commissioned the market. Unfortunately, as we speak, the market is not functioning as it should, just because the road is in a deplorable state. Our taxi drivers every 2 weeks has to go to Abosokai to change their spare parts and stuff like that. Which, in fact, it's really not helping.
District Chief Executive for Ningo Prampram, Jonathan Doku, is assuring the youth that plans are in place to construct the road. He says all bottlenecks hampering commencement of work on the road have been removed.
There are several roads within the district. That is a concern to me as a DC. You know, this particular road, variations were done on this road. This was supposed to be a single lane. Variations were done to make it double without approval from the ministry. And for several years, they did not approve of that. It took the current government 2017 for the variations to be approved. I've spoken to the contractor on several times, and I think with a good faith, this current government has approved the variations. I've pleaded with him to move on to the, but he said he has done some job. He has submitted his certificates, and he's waiting for payment. It's refreshing to note that about 2 months ago, some of the certificates have been honored by the Ministry of Roads. So we are expecting him that very soon he will move to site.
My president of a youth group, Jonathan Chawe, is unconvinced.
We have given an ultimatum to the government that we are expecting to hear the response in about 14 days. Now, we also want to be part of the whole process so that we can be able to present whatever response that the government is having to our people, so that they will know the steps that have been taken so far. Because as you can see now, the people are very angry, and then they are agitating. You can see the way you can see the way they are expressing their anger. The demonstration so far has been very peaceful. We have given the government of Ghana 14 days ultimatum so that they can be able to respond to our petition. If we don't hear anything from the government of Ghana, then we will also sit down again and advise.
You're still watching Joy News Prime. We're taking a short break, but still to come, a 27-year-old woman who accused her husband of attempting to kill her in her sleep in 2015 is still in court 4 years on, trying to seek justice.
It's delayed a bit. I'm sure it will lead to the right place. I'm sure it will definitely get to where it is supposed to get to, so that justice will be served.
And later, the newly opened Medina Adenta Highway footbridge has been the subject of social media trolls this week. But the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, whose concerns warranted the odd-looking design, say they are happy with it.
Satisfied with it, and I think future users will be able to work on it or wheel on it without much difficulty.
All those details when we return. You're welcome back. Now, the first footbridge on the Medina Adenta Highway to have been opened to the public this week has been the subject of social media trolls in the last few days. Most of the trolls are focused on the zigzag winding nature of the ramp, as you can see behind me, and the time and effort required to cross over. The contractors have, however, explained the ramp was designed to make it disability friendly, whilst also taking into consideration the space constraints. The Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations on Friday went to assess the ramp so they could form an opinion on it for their members and, interestingly, gave it a thumbs up. Joy News' Jacqueline Nati went along for the test flight and found this report.
The absence of the ramps for the footbridges, which have been in place for several years, was blamed for the many pedestrian knockdowns on the stretch. The fatal knockdown of a female student in November last year, however, sparked a violent protest which resulted in the blockade of the highway. Work on ramps to connect the footbridges to make them usable started not long thereafter, with the first of 6 opened on Monday. Social media users have called it the zigzag ramp and ridiculed the design. While some believe it was designed so some persons could make a killing off it through corrupt means, others thought it was the government's sarcastic way of silencing the protesting residents. It's been suggested residents in the vicinity could now add it to their exercise regime to stay fit. The structural engineer has, however, been explaining what informed the design.
This bridge is disabled friendly, right? And you realize that for them, most of them, they use wheelchairs and some use the walking sticks and all. If we are supposed to make this shorter, that means we are going to have a very steep ramp. That would be very difficult for them to access the footbridge.
The residents who have been using the ramp for the last few days, however, appear not to have any complaints at all, though they concede it takes quite a while to cross over.
It is disability friendly. I mean, the lighter side of it is that those who have been jogging all the way to Ebri to go and experience the mountain, they can easily come here to, use this footbridge. And I see a lot of people comparing this to what the ND's previous government did over there. And it looks as if this one, they are constrained with space. So that is why probably it has all this long stretch and stuff like that, but generally I think it's all right.
We were supposed to go for a meeting at the Beige Bank, or let's say Consolidated Bank here, but then we came from this side and we didn't want to go all the way to move our car there, so we parked in front of the church. And really, if this bridge wasn't here, I couldn't have crossed, like to jump over that road cross over there, and we had this thing to walk on. Though the distance looks quite long, but then the safety is what is key. So.
For persons with disabilities, the flight could take a lot longer.
The length of time I have to climb the whole thing.
How many minutes did it take you?
I think between 15 to 20 minutes, yes. I have to usually, after every 5 minutes after walking, I have to take some rest. But because of this one, it's a lot of people going and coming. You don't get the chance to rest as much as you want to.
You go and you have to land at a place, you have to rest. So those places had to be identified by seeing. You can't just go around, bro. Especially since I'm in the for GFD, I'm for every person with disability. You see, they visually impaired people, especially the partial blind. The land where you land, you rest. It must be some different color.
Christopher could not make it, but he explained it had more to do with the scorching sun.
It's sunny, and it's very exhausting, and so I just made it to the point where I could, access the shade, and so I could just rest there. At the end of the day, it was a teamwork. It was a team assessment, and so everybody, the rest of the team, were able to make it. Yeah, but then you could see the sun, very exhausting, and so when I was going, it was hitting my eye. I just had to get to a place and relax.
The however say they would want to be part of the planning process in the future.
And that was Jacqueline Nati's report. We hope more people will use the footbridge now. We're taking a breather for business, and ahead, First Atlantic Bank begins crediting accounts of laid-off staff despite disagreements over severance packages. But Labour expert Austin Game has described the move as unlawful.
Fair for the management not to complete the negotiation with the beneficiaries before crediting their accounts. Is inappropriate under the law.
Penny will be here with details and more. You're welcome back. Now, Parliament has approved $69 million tax waiver for Sinohydro project despite protests from the minority that without value for money audit, no waiver should have been given. We go live to Parliament. Our correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gapo is standing by. Hello, Joseph. Can you tell us more about the concerns from the minority side?
The minority MPs have made a point that they had requested a value for money audit on that particular bill, even before any such tax waiver.
Before any such tax waiver can be given, which they had actually not been given. They make the point that without a value for money audit, you can't tell the exact cost of the project to the extent that you'd be giving the company any form of tax waivers. And again, one thing that the minority MPs were drawing the House attention to before the Sinohydro tax waiver was approved was that previously a document had been laid in Parliament indicating that the tax waiver request was $82 million. But eventually that document was withdrawn and a subsequent one with the tax waiver request of $69 million was laid, and they were asking for details on how come there was the change. But eventually, that demand from Alhaji Nusaf Hussaini, the MP for Tamale Central, was overruled, and then the House went ahead to pass that particular tax waiver, $69 million for the $500 million Sinohydro project. And then there's another tax waiver that the House has given approval for. That is for the one district, one factory implementation project. And the minority had insisted that anytime tax waiver requests come, it comes with a specific figure. But this time around, government was asking for a blanket tax waiver without specifics on which entities it will go to, and they thought that may be prone to abuse. But again, the compromise position was that even after this blanket approval, when there is a request for any additional tax waiver for any specific institution, that will be approved separately. So those two items have actually been dealt with. And currently, the House was moving on to deal with the agreement between AGM Petroleum and GNPC as well as Government of Ghana, which now we know that the Mines and Energy Committee has recommended that the House approves, except that this was by a majority decision because the minority voted against that. But the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Koh, indicated that they needed to do some consultation with the minority on the issue. As to what exactly that consultation entails, no one knows, before they would get back to it. So he gave the room for them to deal with other business, and specifically the Road Safety Authority bill, which is changing the Road Safety Commission into an authority. And the Speaker himself is out of the chamber, as well as the majority and the minority leaders, for the necessary consultation to be done on the GNPC AGM petroleum deal. Before we are expecting that a little later in the evening, they would come back to the floor to deal with it as to whether they would approve it or otherwise.
All right, many thanks. That's our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku-Gapo, and we'll be getting updates even as the House prepares to rise. You're welcome back. Now, a 27-year-old woman who became paralyzed after she was allegedly shot by her husband in her sleep in 2015 is still seeking justice in the courts 4 years after the incident. Benita Dunkwa, who was heavily pregnant at the time, went to bed with her husband, Effort Dunkwa, on the night of Friday, August 23, 2015, only to wake up with a bullet hole through her chest. Although she was safely delivered of a baby, Benita was left paralyzed from the waist down and has been confined to a wheelchair. Here is Benita when she first shared her story with Joy News almost 4 years ago.
Here is Benita when she first shared her story with Joy News almost 4 years ago.
So there was no blood on me too. There was no much blood on me. So I asked him. I was conscious by then. I tapped him, he woke up. And I told him to get something, put on something for me and also wear something. I miss walking. I miss working. And I miss many things because now I can't do anything. I'm just sitting here all day. If I want to sleep, I sleep. I can't do anything. But sometimes I think it will take a long time. But I have hope.
Benita's husband has always maintained his innocence, insisting he did not fire any gun and also never heard the supposed gunshot which almost killed his wife. Benita's lawyers, however, argued in court on Friday her husband shot her in the chest and that a blood-soaked towel which was found under the couple's bed is proof the suspect attempted killing his wife. The room was not broken into, and police say the gun was fired at close range. The case has been adjourned to May 24. For Benita, though, the wait for justice has been too long.
Even though it's delayed a bit, I'm sure it will lead to the right place. It will get to the right. Looking at how the proceedings are going, I'm sure it will definitely get to where it is supposed to get to so that justice will be served. There were so many lies though, but we are sure to go through it as time goes on. The witnesses will come on board and we are sure to get the truth out of it all and know who actually did this and then justice be served.
Mother of the victim, Agnes Yurinchi, is only hopeful her daughter will walk again.
There are so many the difficulties. I don't know where to start and where to end because I don't know whether to talk about how to lift her or how to take care of her or how we spend on her. I don't know which one to start off. In fact, we have enough. Enough difficulties. And with the help of God, we are going through.
So she's not able to walk at all now?
No, not yet. But I hope God will make her walk.
Now, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative has vowed to pile pressure on the Attorney General to decriminalize petty offences. The non-governmental organization argues that decriminalizing and declassifying petty offences such as prostitution, smoking of marijuana and stealing would free up Ghana's already congested prisons. Speaking at a media workshop on Friday, Head of the Department for Public Law at GIMPA, Edmond Amakwe Foley, said most laws that criminalize such offences are outdated and vague and inconsistent with the African Charter.
Yes, the next step really is to move towards legislative change. Act 29 needs to be amended. I did hint at the fact that I've heard that there are moves to actually amend Act 29 since it was adopted in 1960. And so that is really where the advocacy is going for. And so together with the support of the media, and we're very grateful that you've given us this time to continue that sustained pressure, just as we have done on the fight against Galamsey and on the right to information. It may be a long, drawn-out battle, but we'll definitely get there. And so we should sustain the engagement and the pressure. In so many ways, we would have actually been improving our human rights record, because if you look at the number of people who find themselves incarcerated for petty offences, it adds a lot to our remand prisoner population and some of even our convict population. So to that extent, yes, in terms of meeting the same international standards we've gone to sign as a country, it would help. It will also have benefits in terms of cost cutting and saving on more or less directing our resources better into fighting more serious crime than to have our police stations and police officers pursuing crimes which we could otherwise have resolved through other legal means. I mean, like through tort actions. If there's been a petty assault or damage to property, this can be resolved through a civil process rather than a criminal process. Right, recognizing that sanitation could also have grave environmental consequences. One would have to walk that line carefully. There may be certain instances in which you would want to put people in prison, for example, if they are heavy polluters. But if you look at the regular person who would fall afoul of that provision in the law and go before the sanitation court, you are better off giving them a non-custodial sentence to go clean up their act, right, rather than locking them up in prison. I have always been a strong proponent for non-custodial sentences in the sanitation court, but then it needs to go along with you improving sanitation as a state. I always talk about the infrastructure for justice and allied services towards justice. It is not enough to create a penal system without giving people alternatives. So she litters, you ask her to clean up, and yet you don't have a program of providing bins. You will not get anywhere. So we should have a very holistic approach to our justice sector reform in those areas. Justice speaks to the community, not to the text of the law in textbooks and on the statute books. You're welcome.
Mr. Foley has also been explaining why prostitution and other offences should be decriminalized.
Crime needs to take account of the society. And yes, definitely, as you have rightly alluded to, from religious and moral standpoints, many Ghanaians may not be in favor of prostitution. But it remains a fact that persons, and from very cogent research, persons engaged in prostitution are also engaging in the act from the perspective of poverty, want, need, and some debilitating social conditions that push people into such conduct. If you decriminalize prostitution, one way when you decriminalize is to find alternatives to punishing that conduct. But what we would prefer is you rehabilitating instead of punishing. Some countries have seen that it has some economic benefit to the people who engage in it, like the Netherlands, and so they would tax them. We need to look at all these models. But oh, definitely, you stand to gain something, either directly or indirectly, because if you're going to continue incarcerating people for prostitution, it increases your justice sector bill in terms of taking care of people in prison. If you decriminalize it, you actually give those people an opportunity to, engage in the trade if they choose to, and if you want to even make more money, you tax them, right? Tax has never been a question of morality. I mean, we tax all manner of things that are immoral as well. I mean, smoking, drinking, we have taxes on alcohol. So why wouldn't you do the same? But even if you have serious moral considerations as a country and you wouldn't want to go into that area, then at the very least, decriminalize it and rather have a program of rehabilitation that helps prostitutes and people living off prostitution to have a better life.
Practitioners who attended the workshop have been sharing their thoughts on this issue.
In summary, I'm a bit more informed about the processes in court, some of the laws we have, and the need to review many of such laws. We've heard complaints severally by critics who say when the ordinary Ghanaian steals a goat or a bunch of plantain, that person could be jailed for as much as 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, or fined heavily. Yet we have, and it's perceived that politicians take so much from the state, and some of them eventually go scot-free. From the presentations by the various resource persons, I am beginning to appreciate that there are several of our archaic laws which may have been tailored by our colonial masters to suit their comfort. And we have inherited them, and now we are realizing that it's coming back to haunt us because we agree our prisons are choked. And many people may have done a lot of service to our own communities by rendering services or maybe giving some fines that they can manage. So at the end of the day, I am walking away feeling a bit more appreciative.
Now, former CEO of Venture Capital Trust Fund, Daniel Duku, has pleaded not guilty to 89 counts of various charges leveled against him. Attorney General Gloria Okufor on Friday told an Accra High Court the state intends to prove the actions of Mr. Duku and 5 others resulted in a loss of more than 42 million cedis to the state. She alleged the accused persons conspired in the disbursement of various sums under a loan scheme set up contrary to law to non-existent companies. They all pleaded not guilty to the charges. There's more in the following report.
Former employees of venture capital Richard Agbenyefia, Irene Mensah and her husband Kofi Sapon, who is a businessman, and Frank Abuaji Mensah have been slapped with various counts of charges including money laundering, woefully causing financial loss to the state, and stealing. Attorney General Gloria Ekufu told the court Mr. Dunkwa approved loans to non-existent companies. She said the state intends to prove that their actions resulted in a loss of more than 42 million cedis to the state. They all pleaded not guilty to the charges. The defense lawyers, including Kisie Jabin, applying for bail, said their clients will cooperate with the court. They stated that their clients have so far cooperated with relevant state agencies and traveled abroad in some instances, but always showed up when they were needed. Attorney General Gloria Ekufu responded that the state in principle was not against the application, but wanted appropriate bail conditions to be imposed. She said Mr. Dunkwa overstayed a trip abroad while investigations were ongoing. Justice Antonio Alpong granted accused persons bail in various sums ranging from 20 to 50 million cedis, all to be justified. The case has been adjourned to May 24 for trial to commence.
Now, no water, no healthcare centers, and the only school around is an hour's walk away. That's the situation in the Ahanta West community of Jedua. Children here who want to go to school have to walk more than an hour to the nearest school. As a result, many children have dropped out of school. Joy News' Henry Kwesi-Bedu visited the village and has filed this report.
Every election year, Jedua bustles with energy as politician after politician comes around to appeal for votes. But in this community, everyone struggles to get the basic amenities of life, including water and healthcare. The nearest source of water is about a mile away, a muddy pool under some bamboo trees. The residents clear the leaves off the surface and then fetch. And if they must get a semblance of a clean source of water, they have to walk for about 40 minutes to a borehole dug by World Vision. The task of collecting water falls on women and children, especially girls. I take a trip with some residents as they trek to the borehole.
Our source of water, the stream, is so unclean, but because we have no option, we cook and wash with it and even drink it. The source of potable water is far away. Children and even adults go through a lot of pain to fetch this water. We need help.
16-year-old Salome Mensah has lived at Jedua all her life. She's a pupil of the Buakrum DA Primary School. Salome tells me she walks for about an hour to school daily.
Salome Mensah. My name is Salome Mensah. I am in class 6. My school name is Buakrum. My school name is Buakrum DA Primary School. When I wake up morning, I walk to school very difficult. Since our child.
Children below 8 years cannot go to school. At the age of 20, Grace Mensah already has 2 children. But she will not allow any of them to go to school because their limbs are not strong enough to do the hour-long walk. She prefers they stay at home.
I have 2 children, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. Because of the nature of our roads, they have never been enrolled at any school. I don't want to risk their lives, so I prefer they stay at home. Until they are a bit older, my children will not attend school. I am afraid of the dangerous routes.
And the community has more problems. Access to health care. Kweku Kwaten is a farmer. He moved into this community from the eastern region some 30 years ago. Kweku recounts how a pregnant woman nearly lost her life because her family struggled to carry her on the bad road to hospital. We badly need good roads here. I remember we had to carry a woman in labor on a cane chair and walked miles in order to reach a hospital, all because of our bad roads. The woman delivered on her way to the health center, so we brought her back to the village. Luckily, she survived with her child. This was an unpleasant experience. We need a health center at least.
I was crying for a crumb now. All we will come. No, they yes and Yamando, anybody.
Surviving in Jedua is a daily miracle. Children here may have great dreams and aspirations in life, but the reality of the situation is that, with conditions so unfriendly, these dreams would never be more than a pipe dream. Henry Kwesibedu's report for Joy News.
And that's how we call it a wrap. Thank you for joining us throughout the week. And this is how we call it a wrap. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. As we said earlier, PM Express is up next. There's personality profile, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'm Abba Kumsin. Enjoy your weekend.